Yo, welcome back everybody. I hope you guys are doing well as always. It's been a couple weeks since I last uploaded, and to be honest with you guys, it's really just come down to like a motivation thing. I don't know, I seem to have just kind of lost a little bit of motivation over the past couple weeks, whether it being like me just getting burnt out with music and content and all that stuff. So I kind of think I just needed a little bit of a break, and I'm feeling a little better now. I'm not going to come back here and not promise like, oh, I'm going to start uploading, 3 times a week, every week, blah, 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 because I never want to make those promises and then not do it and then just kind of let you guys down. So I will be trying to do my best to upload once a week like I used to, but we'll just see where it goes. I definitely want to shift more into doing some more like creative types of content. I've kind of just gotten sick of doing like the same tutorials over and over, and that's partially my fault for just keep trying to do the same content over and over. So I definitely want to switch it up a little bit and do some new stuff. To get back into the swing of things, I'm doing a Q&A today. I posted on my Instagram story and in my Discord like a couple weeks ago asking for questions from you guys. And we got about 15 or so to go through today. I'm definitely going to do more Q&As in the future, so if you guys would like to ask me questions, definitely join my Discord and follow me on Instagram. I'll leave both of those links in the description below. But all right, jumping right into this one, we got our first question, and it is, how long did it take you to get your first placement, and who was it with? Now, to me, the word placement is kind of like a subjective word. It can really like vary depending on who you ask, like what their like idea of a placement is. If we're talking like a major placement, one that was like, I actually got paid for it. It was actually the Trippie Redd song, which is kind of crazy to have that as like your first placement. And I started producing in like roughly the end of 2020, early 2021. And I believe that song happened in 2023, like just at the end of it, I believe. So it took a solid 2.5 years maybe before I ever saw like a real placement. I got songs with some smaller artists here and there before that, but it was mainly just like friends that I was working with. It wasn't like, huge like placements where you would get like paid in advance and royalties and all that stuff. So yeah, I would say that Trippie Redd song was definitely my first one. Next question we got, what's the best way to make the quickest and easiest melodies? To be honest, I don't think there really is like a blueprint for just like making melodies like with ease. You definitely can implement some sort of like, techniques and whatnot to use throughout every single one of your melodies and whatnot. But for me, like the creative process and the part that I enjoy is coming up with like new ideas. And that usually ends up taking way longer than just kind of going through the motions of like making a certain type of melody. My advice for how to improve though is just repetition. Watching YouTube tutorials, that's kind of what I did for the first like 2 years of making music. I would watch a tutorial, I would go to my computer, try to make that beat kind of similar to how they did in the tutorial, just so I'm kind of like walking myself through the individual steps that they took. And then you can take those steps and implement them into your own creative process. And come up with some new stuff. So that would be my advice for kind of like getting better at melodies. Next question we got, what would you say to a discouraged producer about not having success in music yet? I think this is a great question because a lot of people tend to get discouraged really fast. And I think a lot of younger and newer producers have this sort of mentality that like a placement should be happening within like the first couple months of you sending out beats. And they might say like, oh, I've sent out 50 beats and I got no placements. Like there are producers who have been sending out beats for 5+ years and still don't have placements. So it's really just kind of up to you to do the networking and kind of put yourself into positions where you can possibly get placements. And I think somebody asked about that in a different question, so I'll kind of go more into that. But yeah, you kind of gotta take charge. I think a big mistake I made when I was a younger producer was that I felt like, oh, if I just keep making beats, like someone's gonna hit me up to ask for beats, and like, Drake is gonna reach out and be like, hey man, send me beats. And that's just really not the case. You gotta put yourself out there. You've gotta reach out to these people, and the worst they can do is just either not reply or just say no, and then you just move on. you keep getting better at your craft, and eventually you may get to a point where they do recognize you and they say, oh, I actually do want beats from this guy. And at that point you can start sending, and the placements will just like keep coming in. So definitely don't get discouraged. It can take a while, and some people do get really lucky when they get a placement within a couple months of producing. It's different for every single individual. The next question is, how should I network as an introverted producer? So this is kind of relating to the other question, but this also relates to me, because before I started doing like YouTube and stuff, I was super introverted. I still am pretty introverted in like real life. I don't really talk to a lot of people like outside of music stuff. And I always found it hard for me to kind of be myself around people that I don't really know yet. So it was always hard to kind of bridge that gap between meeting new people. One thing that has definitely helped me though, as far as networking, was the content side of things. It was sort of like a way to just network yourself without having to be the one that's reaching out to people. If you put a lot of good content out in the world, people are gonna notice, and people are gonna start wanting to work with you. Now, I need to emphasize the fact of putting out good content. If you're just posting like beat snippets on Instagram, or just like screen recordings of FL, which I'm definitely guilty of, people aren't really gonna see that and think like, oh, this is something different and this is something that I want to like attach myself to. They're just gonna see it as another person posting beats online. Another thing with the content is, do not be afraid to talk. Do not be afraid to show your face. People want to see who is behind these beats. You could make the craziest beats in the world, and it's only going to get you so far before somebody's going to want to build a connection with you. And if they don't know what you look like, they don't know what you sound like, they don't know like who you are, anything about you, it's gonna just hold a gap between you and that person forever, building any kind of relationship. So it's so important to get yourself out there personality wise. Yeah, there's no real like, I can't really give any advice about like how to overcome it. You just have to do it. Make content, make these YouTube videos. A couple of years ago, I would have never thought that I would be recording myself making YouTube videos. I was like, there's no way, I'm way too shy for this. I can't do this. But at the end of the day, you're really just coming to the fact of like, it's just you in this room talking to a camera. Like, I'm just talking to a camera right now. There's nobody else in this room. And so it becomes easier and easier when you start thinking about like, I'm not actually sitting here talking to like 5,000 people. You are in a way, but it's just you right here. So it's much easier to kind of put yourself out there when you start thinking about it like that. Next question is actually a good one. It says, how long does it take for you to make your sound kits? And is it a 50-50 split between you and the other producer if you're working with another producer to make that kit? So how long does a sound kit take? It really depends on what it is. If it's like a full package thing where it's like, a Serum bank, one shots, drum kit, like all of that stuff, like my recent kit with me and Gateway Gems, I would say we've been working on that one for probably half a year, like 6 months plus. Same with the whiteout and blackout kits. We worked on those for multiple months at a time. But then you get some other kits, like my recent Overcast 3 kit. That was just a Serum bank, so that took maybe like a month and a half, I would say. So it all just depends on what's inside the kit. Your average kit probably will take anywhere from like a month to 2 months if it's just a couple things in there. But like I said, if you're stacking like a bunch of kits inside of one, it's gonna take 4+ months at least, I would say, to get a really good quality product. And yeah, if I'm working with another producer on a kit, everything is split in half, no matter like how much work went into the kit. Usually beforehand, we'll kind of go through and have like a big Excel sheet of whatever we want to achieve in the kit, and then we kind of split it up in between each other for like how many sounds this person needs versus how many sounds this person needs. And that's just kind of a good way to keep each other accountable, so it doesn't get to the point where like one person has done 90% of the work and then you still got to split all the money with them, which never seems fair. So we try to keep it as even as possible and do like the same amount of work. Next question is, what is your dream placement? This one is an interesting question because I don't know if I have like a specific artist in mind for a dream placement. I think any producer's goal in this is to like get that #1 song. And I think that's kind of like my dream placement. I wouldn't necessarily call it a dream placement with an artist, but I just want that that one song that just like blows up way past whatever it was supposed to be. And those moments are pretty rare, but I think that's kind of the ultimate goal that I'm chasing right now. If I had to pick an artist for my dream placement, I would probably say Cardi. I've been a fan of Cardi since like the Die Lit era, and I just think his music is so cool, and just the beats he chooses and everything. Yeah, I just have a lot of memories attached to like old Cardi, so it would be a really cool kind of full circle moment for me to get a placement with him. So the next question is, how did you start working with Jace? So I started working with Jace through Gateway, actually. Me and Gateway had been locked in for a while after the Trippie Redd song had dropped, and we were just kind of making stuff like every day. And I think Gateway had ended up sending one of our beats to like a Jace email that he found through our collective or something, and Jace ended up just seeing it and using it. Me and Gateway just kind of went crazy on a ton of lab beats and whatnot, and we were sending packs to Jace like every day. And he just kept using them. And then eventually he kind of started to notice our names more, and I started sending stuff individually that he would use, and it all went from there. All right, so the next question is, how do you manage your job and music at the same time? This is a really good question because I've definitely struggled with it in the past. For any of you who don't know, I work a 9 to 5, so like a typical job, Monday through Friday. So it definitely gets challenging for me to find the time to make music after that. Usually what I'll do is I get home from work, I try to allocate at least a couple hours every day to kind of do music for myself or do whatever I think is a good creative outlet. Some days it won't be music, sometimes it'll be games or, hanging out with friends and whatnot. It falls down to yourself with time management. We all have the same amount of hours in the day. You just got to figure out what times work best for you. If that's waking up early before your job and making music, then you got to do that. If it's staying up late at night and doing it, then that's what works best for you. But it's really about just kind of setting your own goals. A lot of the times I'll kind of set like smaller goals for myself every day. So maybe like, all right, today I want to make 2 loops, tomorrow I want to make 5 beats, whatever it is. And then you can say on Wednesday, I don't want to make music at all. I'll take that day to do whatever I want to do for myself. So I think it's just all about setting, like a good schedule for yourself and just kind of managing your time like that. And then the last question we got from Instagram was, how do I reach out to bigger artists I want to work with? This answer sounds pretty simple, but it's just DM them. Like I said before in a different question, the worst someone can do is either just say no or they just won't respond. So there's really no harm in reaching out to people that you want to work with. The only thing I would suggest is have stuff ready for that person in case they do say yes, or they want to, they give you a number or an email or whatever. A bad scenario to be in is asking a bunch of people to send beats and they all say yes, and then you have nothing to send them because you didn't think they would actually respond. So definitely hit up people that, you have beats ready for. Everybody is probably like, oh, I would love to work with Drake, and, I DM Drake, he's never going to answer, but, I'll DM him and see what he says. And imagine you DM him and he responds and says, yeah, send stuff right now, I'm in the studio. And you have nothing to send him. You don't make Drake beats. So it's like, always have stuff ready for whoever you do want to work with that you're reaching out to, just in case they say yes. All right, then we got a couple questions from Discord. The first Discord question is, what is your most proud placement? I think a lot of my favorite placements are from Jace's Reverence 2 album. Those are some of my favorite beats that I made. And like I said, that was the time when me and Gateway were kind of locking in on kits and loops and beats just like every day. And I think we made some of our best beats to date in that album. And Jace, I think he did a really good job overall on that entire album. My favorite song on that one is probably either Check It Out or Boogie Shoogie. Those beats are just like, probably in my top 5 beats that I've ever made. I just love the feeling of them and the like nostalgia I get from listening to them. So I would say those are my most proud placements. Number 2 is, who inspired you to make music? I think honestly, I gotta give all of my inspiration credit probably to Nick Mira. I found his YouTube videos from the Internet Money channel like in 2017 maybe, and this was like years before I ever even considered actually producing myself. I would literally just watch them as a fan, and I just thought they were so interesting. And you know, like back then it was hard for me to understand like, oh, this is actually how music is made. Like you don't ever really think about it if you're not a producer. So it was kind of a weird, like sort of eye-opening moment to be like, oh, like, you know, the beats are made up of all these different layers and drum sounds and whatever, and then the artist gets on it, and it was just cool to see the whole process back then. And then, you know, years later on, I started to make beats, so I would say he was probably the biggest inspiration for me. The third question from Discord is, when did you realize you wanted to / should take music seriously? I think I started realizing I could really do it seriously after the first kit I made with I Am Starborn. We made Star Chaser 2, the sound kit, and it like sold way more copies than I had ever even imagined it could. And at that point after, I was kind of like, oh, like, you know, this could actually be something that I could do for a long time, which is crazy because it wasn't even like placement wise. You know, a lot of people are thinking like, oh, like I got my first placement, I made money, now I'm thinking I can do this forever. Like for me, it was like, oh no, I could grind these kits out and I could make some serious money doing this. And that was kind of the point where I was like, I should probably start doing this seriously and like really grind it out. And I just have ever since then. All right, the last question is actually an interesting one. Is being a producer harder than people say? In my opinion, I would probably say yes, but it depends who you ask, because if you're asking another producer, they're gonna tell you that it's probably one of the most difficult like jobs creatively, because you never know when you're gonna get paid. You don't know if you will be getting paid. You could go years without getting a song, which means no money's coming in. So if you're doing music as a sole job, like it's your only job, it is very stressful because you really never, it's like so unstable, and you never know, like I said, those streaks where you could be like nothing could be happening for you, and that's kind of a scary time to be in. So I would say it's probably harder than the average person says. You know, somebody who's outside of music probably says, oh, like you're just a producer, you get to like make music for a living. And yes, it does seem like that, but like I said, there can be times where it gets pretty scary. So yeah, that's it for all the questions. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully I gave some good feedback and answers that you guys can take into consideration for whatever. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Join the Discord, like I said. Also, all of my kits are on my brand new website. I know I talked about it in the last videos, but I launched a new website called the Kit Warehouse, where all of my kits are going to be from now. There's actually a deal running right now too. You get $10 off your entire order, no matter what you order. So go take advantage of that if you've been wanting any of my kits. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.